Canada, the second largest country in the world, known for maple syrup, hockey, and being extremely polite. But beyond the stereotypes, Canada is hiding some genuinely surprising facts that most people have never heard. Let's get into it. And stay till the end because fact number 9 might be the most unexpected thing you hear about Canada today. Most people know Canada is large, but the scale of its coastline is something else entirely. Canada's coastline stretches over 202,000 kilometers. That's larger than any other country on Earth. To put that in perspective, you could wrap it around the equator 5 times. The next closest country is Norway at roughly 58,000 kilometers. Canada has more than 3 times that. Canada doesn't just have a lot of lakes. It has more lakes than every other country on Earth combined. Over 60% of the world's freshwater lakes are inside Canadian borders, roughly 2 million lakes in total. This means Canada holds an enormous portion of the world's entire freshwater supply. In a world where clean water is becoming increasingly scarce, Canada is sitting on one of the most valuable natural resources on the planet. In 1971, Canada became the first country in the world to adopt multiculturalism as an official government policy. This meant the government actively encouraged people of all cultural backgrounds to maintain their heritage while participating equally in Canadian society. Today, over 200 languages are spoken in Canada, and more than 20% of its population was born in another country. It remains one of the most diverse nations on Earth by design, not by accident. Canada is home to roughly 10% of all the forests on Earth. That's 347 million hectares of forest covering nearly 40% of entire country. The Canadian boreal forest alone is the largest intact forest ecosystem remaining on the planet, larger than the Amazon. It stores more carbon than any other terrestrial ecosystem on Earth, making it critical to the entire planet's climate stability. The border between Canada and the United States stretches 8,891 kilometers, making it the longest international border in the world. And unlike most borders on Earth, it has no military presence along its entire length. No walls, no armed checkpoints along the vast majority of it. Just an invisible line through forests, fields, and mountains. It's considered one of the most remarkable examples of peaceful international relations in history. Canada's national animal is the beaver, which most people know. But what most people don't know is that in 1970s, a serious proposal was made in Canadian Senate to replace the beaver with the polar bear. Senator Nicole Germain argued the beaver was a timid, toothless creature unworthy of representing Canada. The debate went on for years. The beaver survived, but only just. Today it still appears on the Canadian nickel and is one of the most recognizable national symbols in the world. 3 of the most impactful inventions in modern history came from Canadians. Basketball was invented by Canadian James Naismith in 1891. Insulin, which saved hundreds of millions of diabetic lives, was discovered by Frederick Banting in Toronto in 1921. The Alexander Graham Bell made the first successful telephone call from his family home in Ontario. Canada's contribution to modern civilization is genuinely underappreciated. Canada has some of the most entertainingly named places on Earth. There's a town called Moose Jaw in Saskatchewan, a place called Dildo in Newfoundland, a village called Punky Doodle's Corners in Ontario, and a lake called Lac La Ronge. Canada clearly has a sense of humor about its geography, and absolutely no regrets about any of these names. The Canadian stereotype of being polite is so real that Ontario actually passed the Apology Act in 2009. The law states that saying sorry does not count as an admission of guilt in legal proceedings. Why? Because Canadians were apologizing so frequently in everyday situations, including accidents and minor incidents, that those apologies were being used against them in court. Canada literally had to legally protect its own citizens from the consequences of being too polite. No other country on earth has needed this law. In 1967, the town of St. Paul in Alberta built the world's first official UFO landing pad as a centennial project. It was partly a tourism stunt and partly a genuine statement. The town's mayor said outer space is an international domain and should be kept free from human warfare. The landing pad still exists today, and St. Paul still proudly calls itself the UFO capital of the world. No confirmed landings yet. And now, the myth. You've probably heard that Canada is one of the most sparsely populated countries on earth. Vast empty wilderness with people scattered few and far between. And while Canada does have the second lowest population density of any large country, here's what nobody tells you. 90% of all Canadians live within 160 kilometers of the US border. The entire northern 80% of the country, which looks enormous on any map, is home to less than 1 million people. So Canada isn't really a country spread across a vast land. It's essentially a very long, thin strip of population hugging one border, with an enormous empty north that almost no Canadian has ever actually visited. So how many of these did you already know? Drop your score in the comments and find out where you land. 0 to 3, you're a beginner explorer. 4 to 6, curious traveler. 7 to 9, geography expert. And if you got all 10, are you actually Canadian? Next week, we are heading to China. And I promise that the facts are even more surprising than these. Subscribe so you don't miss it.